What better way to kick off Labor Day weekend? We got Boise State, South Florida going at it Thursday, 5:30 Eastern game on ESPN. The first true test for Boise State en route to Mountain West title season and playoff hopes. And South Florida return a lot of guys on offense, explosive team. What better way to start your season for Boise State than to go on the road and take on a tough South Florida team that shouldn't be taken lightly. They return a lot of guys on their offense and had a pretty good defense that ranked top 20 in tackles for loss last season. This is the first true test for Boise State. Looking at it, this is a team that, Boise State opens up 6.5 point spread. The Bulls, a team that returns both their quarterbacks from last season. Byron Brown, who started the first 5 games before a knee injury, sidelined his season. Bryce Archie came in and led them to a 5-3 record through the second half of the season. They won a bowl game against San Jose State in the Hawaii Bowl, in a game that went to 5 overtimes. This is a competitive team and a great first test for the Broncos to see where they're at. Bulls return all their offensive linemen from last season. 5 guys that saw starts a year ago, 5 seniors. They're going to look to Keyshawn Singleton, who, they dubbed Baby Megatron, Calvin Johnson. They were able to run the ball effectively last year, but they do lose all their running backs from last season. Head coach Alex Galesh is entering his 3rd season. 2 winning seasons, 2 bowl game appearances. He's got South Florida in the right direction. They've still yet to win an American Conference title. They're expected to contend this year. They got Tulane and Navy just ahead of them at the moment, but we'll see what this season brings. As for Boise State, we're going to get our first look at them without Ashton Jeanty. Maddox Madsen's going to be at the helm. I think he's going to get a lot more touches this season. They're going to rely on him a lot more. They do got Sire Gaines, who's going to try and fill the role for Jeanty as best as he can. Defensively, they should be solid. Return plenty of guys both sides of the ball. We're going to see just how human they are. Last year they had a tough matchup against Oregon, which they lost by a field goal. Other than that, their season was unscathed, and they sort of rolled into postseason play. No issues. A great test for Spencer Danielson's 2025 squad and see just how effective they can be. I think this is going to be a close game. 6.5 point spread. You may want to take South Florida on it just because they're at home and home opener. They've been preparing for Boise State all season long, all summer. I think this is going to be a close game to the very end. If Boise State finds a way to separate themselves early on and maintain that lead, it'll be a great indicator of just where they're at. But I wouldn't sleep on South Florida. I think, we're going to see where the running game's at for them, but I think with that line and, 2 quarterbacks that had great starts last season, defensively, just looking at this South Florida team, they return 6 guys from the defense. They're led by their linebackers, Mac Harris and Jalen Schuler, who led the team in tackles each the past couple of seasons. Plenty of guys on this ball-hawking defense. They may be a bigger factor than the offense itself, just if they could stop the explosive Boise State offense. I'm sure South Florida is going to find a way to score with what they have, with that big old line. What can the Broncos do to overcome that? They have one of the best defenses in the country returning, Can they find a way to push through that? Are they going to be able to do it running the ball? Are they going to be able to do it through the air? South Florida led in turnovers, for the most part of the country last year. South Florida had 32 sacks last season. A team that could give the Broncos trouble early on. As for Boise State defense, they returned, 6 defensive starters from last season, led by Jaden Virgin Morgan, who had 10 plus sacks last season. Defensively, they match up equally with South Florida, and offensively, maybe not as explosive, but still can match what the Broncos are bringing to the table. This could be a really interesting, close game throughout. I'm hoping it is, just to see if we could get the best out of both teams early on in the season. It's a team that could give a lot of other teams fits, and we're going to see, primetime game on ESPN to kick off the season, all eyes on them. I think Boise State pulls this out, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's,